I mean, and for all the producers out there who have mastered this or are well on their way, I'm beyond impressed. I really am. Hi there, I'm Mikey K. Now, recently, I set a goal for myself, probably a very stupid one, to write a hit song. And this means I need to get better at music production. I knew a little bit going into this, but was nowhere near the caliber that I needed to be. Which, all this begs the question, well, how hard is this, really? How much am I suffering as I dive into the world of music production? And it turns out it's hard. It's incredibly hard. It's so hard that I'm frankly amazed we have the caliber and quantity of amazing music producers that we do in this world today. And in this video, I'll tell you why. So if you want to learn music production, the process begins with learning a piece of software, something called a DAW, a digital audio workstation. And this is a software kind of, I'm not going to mince words, they're hard to use. Let's dive into the software and let's see what makes this as challenging as it actually is. This is FL Studio. FL Studio is one of the best DAWs on the planet. It's truly great. And what I'm about to say and the criticisms I'm about to levy towards it, it's not to call the software down in any way. I mean, sure, it could be a little bit easier to use, but so could Premiere, so could every piece of business software out there, pretty much. At the end of the day, if you want advanced features, it's going to be a little bit challenging to use. I recognize that. I'm not writing on it. I get it. Now, the first time you boot up FL Studio, it's going to look something a little bit like this, which is to say, frankly, I think from a from a beginner's perspective, pretty confusing. I know I was confused the first time that I ever happened to find my way in this piece of software, happened to open up this software. And it doesn't take too long to figure out that if you click on something and maybe push play, it makes noise. Okay, well, that's great. And you can probably pretty quickly infer, just maybe by accidentally clicking, that you can maybe put down something. But right away, there's a degree of confusion. Like, why isn't this is clearly doing something, but nothing is happening here. There's this little button right here. So there's kind of a baseline level of technical prowess, I think, that you need in order to really be a good producer. But there's this whole other side as well, which is actually putting a song together within the piece of software itself. And I've booted up this project. I put this together real quick this afternoon or this evening, and it just shows what it looks like when there's a bit of a song coming together. So if I just push play here real quick, you can see what it is, and then we'll just talk about it a little bit. Okay, not too much to it, just some basic synthwave that I'm throwing together for fun. But at the end of the day, this is exactly how a song is going to look within this piece of software. It's just that most of it would be far more complicated, ultimately. When it comes to actually putting notes into the software, it's pretty easy, I guess, as long as you know what notes are, right? Like this is where you would go in to put together the bass line, right? And so we just throw our notes in here, and that's it. It's not too complicated, to be frank. So just pushing play real quick. There's not too much to it, right? Once you understand kind of, I guess, what notes are, what chords are, what the keyboard is, you can see there's a keyboard down the side here. It becomes pretty simple, actually, in order to do it. And once you know that, there's this whole functionality where you put the notes in, which maybe could be a little bit tricky to find the first time, but just like anything else, once you find it, hey, you got it. I'm sure in Photoshop, for a lot of people, the selection tool would be hard to find the first time, or the eraser or the paint bucket, right? But once you know where it is, it's pretty self-explanatory, or it's pretty easy to find your way back there again. And this is the exact same thing here. So not that complicated. Actually, loading together all the pieces of a song is pretty simple, and then it's just a matter of continuing to do so. Here's what the chords looks like. Simple, not too much to it. I think most people can pick this up pretty quickly. But there's something else kind of lurking around the corner. A trap, I like to think of it as. A trap that every single producer absolutely has to come across at some point in their production career. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. Let's say that you're responsible for recording the best band in the world, and you know exactly what to do. You're in a professional studio, you have exactly the right equipment, you know how to configure it marvelously. You know everything about the software in order to make sure that there's no glitches, and what you end up with, let's just say it's a rock band, you end up with perfect vocals, you end up with perfect bass guitar, you end up with perfect guitar, perfect drums, and you load them all into a DAW, just like this one, just like we can take a little look at all the different layers here, and you would have a layer for vocals, a layer for drums, etc., etc. You load them all in, and you push play, and you might be very, very surprised to find out that song is not going to sound all that good. In fact, it will probably sound surprisingly bad if you go and listen to it on a decent pair of speakers. And there's a reason for this. You can't just layer instruments on top of each other endlessly. You push play and it just doesn't sound that good. It doesn't sound professional. And then a little Google search and you discover a keyword: mixing. And that's where you've fallen into the trap. That's where you realize, oh, there are levels to this. There's a whole nother thing that I actually have to get good at. I'll give you an example right here in this synthwave song that I've put together. I'm gonna take off the instruments so that all is gonna play will be the bass and the kick drum. That's the bass drum. And I'm gonna push play. And just to give you a quick little sample of what that sounds like, and then I'm gonna talk about it real quick here. So here we go. Okay, sounded pretty decent. This is not what it would sound like if you just put those instruments together. As I illustrate this, I just want to point out, if you're using in-ear headphones, if you're on kind of a laptop speakers, if you're listening to speakers that are not of the best quality, you might struggle to hear the difference here. So just bear with me, just trust me on it. But for those who have better quality headphones, better quality speakers, the difference should be super stark. So this is what it sounds like with all those effects that have been built onto and turned off, and they'll turn it back on, and then they'll turn it back off. And it should be fairly obvious what's going on. So here's with everything off. And now I'm gonna turn it on. And now I'm gonna turn it back off. So what's going on here? In this little musical blip that we have, the kick drum comes out way, way, way more once we've done a little bit of mixing. All of a sudden it's very clear, whereas when the effects are off, it's not nearly as clear. It's fascinating. It's fascinating that this is how our songs that we hear on the radio, that are on Spotify, it's that this is how they're put together, right? But for those who are maybe new to music production, or for those who are just stumbling upon it for the first time, this is actually a very unfortunate, very, very disappointing discovery to make. This whole mixing process, it is devilishly hard to get right. I mean, and for all the producers out there who have mastered this or are well on their way, I'm beyond impressed. I really am. I cannot even, I can't wait to get there myself, but it's a journey. Let me tell you that. It's a journey. So that's a look at the hell that producers have to go through in order to make a song that isn't just good musically, but also sounds good sonically. For all of those who have somehow managed to stick with it, to go through all of this when it comes to production, it's like I said, it's amazing the amount of people who have its own behemoth. And I don't know how many hundreds of hours it would take a person sitting at home, glued to the computer, going through this, trying again and again and again, and realize that, like most things that take skill, it takes time for you to really get any results. Most of what I make at this point, I don't even know how many years of musical experience I happen to have, and still most of what I do sounds just absolutely terrible. And that's the journey. That's just what it is. So at the end of the day, I have the utmost respect for anyone who's been able to stick with this and become great at it. It's amazing. Literally tip of the hat to you. It's so cool, and it's been a cool world to go into. Yeah, that's the vid. Oh. Well, thanks for watching the vid. Greatly appreciate it. You know, there's one thing you could do that would really help out a lot, which is if you know someone who produces, if you know someone who's into music, if you know someone who wants to produce, maybe share this video with them. Maybe point them in that direction. And hey, feel free to toss a subscribe or a like on the video. You know what to do. All right, take care.